What's up, everybody? This is Tech G back with another video to help you successfully pass the CompTIA Security Plus 701 certification exam. So let's get into it. In this video, you are going to learn about various physical attacks, network attacks, and application attacks. So let's talk about physical attacks. So physical attacks, they focus on the tangible components of information systems, including hardware devices, data storage mediums, or entire physical locations. And these attacks might manifest through visible damage to hardware, unauthorized physical access to secure facilities, or tampering with cables and connectors. So implementing secure facilities, surveillance, and regular monitoring of physical access, this can deter these types of attacks. All right, next let's talk about a brute force attack. So in a brute force attack, the attacker systematically tries all possible passwords or encryption keys to gain unauthorized access. Offline brute force attacks occur when an attacker gains a hashed file of passwords and attempts to crack them using specialized tools. Strong password hashing, salts, and monitoring for unauthorized access to sensitive files are essential in defending against such attacks. And online brute force attacks, this involves repeated direct login attempts on the target system. Multiple failed login attempts from the same IP address or rapid successive login attempts are indicators. So common mitigation strategies, they include account lockout policies, CAPTCHA challenges, and monitoring of login activities. Another form of physical attack is a physical brute force attack, in which an attacker may literally break down a door or otherwise force their way into a secure location to gain unauthorized access. Implementing secure facilities, surveillance, and regular monitoring of physical access points, these can serve as effective deterrents against these types of attacks. All right, next we have what is called radio frequency identification cloning. So RFID cloning, this involves duplicating information from an RFID tag, such as the tag found in access cards or payment systems. Unauthorized access to RFID-enabled areas or unusual patterns in RFID transactions, this might signal this type of attack. So employing encrypted RFID communication, secondary authentication methods, and vigilant monitoring of RFID access logs, these can protect against RFID cloning. All right, next we have environmental threats. So environmental threats, these are natural or human-caused disruptions affecting the physical environment where systems operate, such as floods, fires, or power surges. And indicators of these threats include abnormal temperature or humidity levels or alarms from environmental monitoring systems. So having disaster recovery plans in place, using environmental controls, and regularly inspecting physical infrastructure are essential practices to mitigate environmental threats. All right, next let's talk about network attacks. So network attacks, they target network services and data availability, integrity, and confidentiality. And these attacks use various tactics, including distributed denial of service attacks, domain name system attacks, wireless attacks, on-path attacks, credential replay, and malicious code. The first one we're going to talk about is a DDoS attack. So a DDoS overwhelms a target system with traffic, rendering it unresponsive. There are two specialized types of DDoS attacks. The first one is an amplified DDoS attack. So an amplified DDoS attack uses network protocols that respond with more data than they receive, and the attacker can flood the victim's system with substantial traffic by spoofing the victim's IP address and sending email requests to servers that reply with larger responses. Then we have what is called a reflected DDoS attack. In a reflected DDoS attack, an attacker sends requests to various servers, forging the victim's IP address as the source, and the servers then send the response to the victim, leading to an influx of unwanted traffic. And mitigating DDoS attacks often involves traffic filtering, rate limiting, and coordination with upstream internet service providers. Next, we have what is called a DNS attack. So a DNS attack targets the system that translates human-readable domain names into IP addresses. By disrupting this service, an attacker can redirect users to malicious sites or make legitimate sites unavailable. And techniques to prevent DNS attacks include implementing DNS security or domain name system security extensions and regularly monitoring DNS requests and responses. All right, next we're going to talk about various wireless attacks. So wireless attacks, they exploit vulnerabilities in Wi-Fi networks, and understanding the various types of wireless attacks can help in implementing effective countermeasures. So here are some specific attacks that you need to be aware of. The first one is called packet sniffing. So attackers, they capture and analyze network traffic to gather information or find vulnerabilities. And the countermeasure to this is to use strong encryption protocols like WPA3. Then we have what are called rogue access points. So unauthorized Wi-Fi access points are added to a network, often to bypass security measures. And the countermeasures are you want to regularly audit the network for unauthorized devices. Next, we have what is called Wi-Fi phishing and evil twins. So attackers, they mimic a legitimate access point to deceive users into connecting, often to steal credentials. And a countermeasure to this is to employ network authentication and alert users to only connect to known networks. Then we have what is called a spoofing attack. So an attacker impersonates another device by falsifying data, often to gain unauthorized access. And a countermeasure to this is to implement MAC address filtering and always use strong authentication. Then we have what is called encryption cracking. This is when an attacker decrypts secure traffic to eavesdrop on communications. And a countermeasure to this is to use the latest encryption standards and regularly update the keys. Next type of wireless attack is called an on-path attack. And this is when an attacker intercepts and possibly alters communication between two parties without their knowledge. And a countermeasure to this is to use VPNs for secure communication. Then we have what is called a DOS attack. And this is when an attacker disrupts network services by overwhelming them with traffic. And a countermeasure is to implement rate limiting and IP filtering. And then we have what is called Wi-Fi jamming. And this is when an attacker floods a network with excessive traffic to disrupt services. And a countermeasure to this is to use intrusion detection systems to identify and block jamming attacks. So employing robust encryption, secure authentication protocols, and network monitoring, all of these can counteract these various Wi-Fi threats. All right, next we have what is called an on-path attack. So an on-path attack, this occurs when an attacker intercepts and possibly alters communication between two parties without their knowledge, and implementing end-to-end encryption, employing secure communication protocols, and validating certificates are common defenses against an on-path attack. Next, we have what is called credential replay. So credential replay, this involves capturing valid user credentials and reusing them to gain unauthorized access. Strong authentication mechanisms such as multi-factor authentication and time-based one-time passwords can prevent credential replay. Next, we have what is called malicious code, and this refers to software that performs unauthorized actions on a network, such as viruses, worms, or Trojan horses. And detection and prevention strategies include deploying anti-malware tools, regularly updating software, and employing network intrusion detection systems. All right, next we're going to talk about application attacks. So an application attack exploits software application weaknesses, potentially leading to unauthorized access, data theft, or system disruption. And understanding the nuances of different types of application attacks is vital for prevention and response. All right, so the first type of application attack we're going to talk about is an injection attack. And this occurs when malicious data is inserted into a query or command, which the application then mistakenly executes, and this can lead to unauthorized access to data, modification of data, or remote command execution. And prevention techniques include using prepared statements, using proper input validation, and employing security controls like web application firewalls. Next type of attack is a buffer overflow. So a buffer overflow attack exploits flaws in an application's memory handling, specifically when more data is written to a buffer than the buffer can handle. And this can cause the application to crash or execute arbitrary code. And countermeasures include utilizing programming languages and compilers that manage memory safely, employing runtime protections, and regularly reviewing code to detect potential vulnerabilities. Next, we have what is called a replay attack, and this involves the unauthorized capture and retransmission of valid authentication data, such as tokens or credentials. Time-based restrictions, encryption, and the use of single-use or expiring authentication tokens are common strategies for mitigating replay attacks. Next, we have what is called privilege escalation, and this is the act of exploiting a bug or design flaw in an application to gain elevated access to resources that are usually restricted. And this can occur through exploiting user permissions or system vulnerabilities. So adhering to the principle of least privilege, regularly patching systems, and monitoring user activities are essential in preventing privilege escalation. Next, we have what is called a forgery attack. And forgery attacks such as cross-site request forgery, they trick users into performing actions they didn't intend to, typically without their knowledge or consent. So using anti-forgery tokens, implementing proper authentication controls, and employing same origin policies are strategies to counteract forgery attacks. And then finally, we have what is called directory traversal. So directory traversal or path traversal, this allows an attacker to access files and directories stored outside the application's intended folder structure. And this can lead to unauthorized viewing, deletion, or modification of files. Implementing proper access controls, validating user input, and using a secure method for file handling are critical defenses against directory traversal. All right, so that was my video where you learned about various physical attacks, network attacks, and application attacks.